Hi and welcome to Knit with Hannah. I'm Hannah, I'm here with Knitting Now to help you knit with ease, confidence and joy, and we are knitting the jumper today. The jumper that is in my fabulous knitting bag. This is the point where I have reached the shoulders and I'm joining the front and the back together. And it's not the most common way of knitting a jumper, but it's not unusual. I have two jumpers still in my wardrobe that I've already knitted. I have one that is knitted in 4 parts, the sleeves, the front and the back, and then it's all joined up and they're all knitted flat. I have one that I've knitted from the collar and I've knitted it top down. I knit to here and then I've knitted the front and the back. I think I knitted them in the round. So I had all of the front and the back stitches on the needle at once. And I was just going round and round and round and round all the way down to the bottom. And then I picked up one sleeve and I knitted that, and I picked up one sleeve and knitted that, all on circular needles. So that's from the top down, and the other one was the 4 different pieces and then sewn together. And then when you've done that, you have to pick up pieces for the collar. That's something I'm going to have to do here as well, so you can see that. Isn't that fun? But this one right now, I'm joining the top of these shoulders so I can then pick up the stitches all the way around here so I can knit the sleeves flat. There is no point where I'm actually joining this seam until I've finished the sleeve, because then you join the sleeve and the body all in one long seam, which I love. I have done that before and it's a great way to knit a jumper. It does leave all the sewing to an end, but in a slightly different way. So one thing to note about this is that I'm going to alter what it says in the pattern. I'm not going to seam the shoulders like it says I should in the pattern. I've looked at it, I've made my choice, and I'm going to go ahead without it. And this is one thing that I want to explain with you while we're doing it, how experience and knowledge of knitting jumpers before can really help. But you have to start somewhere. But let's talk about that while I'm knitting. I will see you in that for sure, and I will see you at the end of this. I found myself a shorter pair of 4mm needles. I can then cast off on a shorter pair. It will certainly be easier for the shoulders to join them with that than with this much longer pair. So I can set myself up and use these to cast off. This you can see is the pattern that I've been scribbling all over as I've been doing various things. What I need to really focus on, and I'm going to do this for that reason, is very simply this bit here. Join left shoulder seams, or join shoulder seams, full stop. So that's what I'm going to focus on. I have the front piece there meeting the top. I have the back piece there meeting the top. Now the interesting part of this instruction: slip to left back shoulder and left front shoulder stitches onto 4mm needles with points of needles at armhole edge, holding front and back together so their wrong sides are together, using a spare needle, length of yarn attached to front shoulder stitches, and with right side of front facing. Now cast off both sets of shoulder stitches at the same time. Join right shoulder seam in the same way. Now, I talked about this possibly in the live that I was doing over New Year. I think it might even be New Year's Day that I was talking about this. And someone in the comments said, take a look at the pictures on the website. And this is really difficult to see, but she was right. I don't think on this bit that I've, oh possibly you can, on this bit that I've printed off, that is a pronounced cast off on the outside of the jumper. So it actually shows there as a design choice. And I don't want that. I'd like the cast off to be on the inside and done with it. I think if it was a thicker yarn, then I might go with it, and it would be a design choice that would show much better. But here, I don't think with this thin yarn it's actually going to show very well, and it will look a bit awkward. I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is cast off differently. What I need to do then is cast off with the 3 needle cast off like you would do normally. So with the wrong sides not being together, but the right sides being together when I cast off. So that's what I'm going to do now. So I would do that with you. So if you're knitting the same jumper as me, then hold tight with doing this. Okay. So right sides together means front and back. I'm going to need to hold it so that the stitch is there and the stitch is there. The end of the needle is there. So we have that and that, which will mean I have the back of the yarn, the back of the jumper facing me when I cast off. So that's the one thing that's different. So here, that's in the right place to cast off. I can carry on with this longer needle. Here I have the right needle to cast off. It's in the right place. The point is at the end where the yarn is. And here I have the yarn that needs to go, the stitches that need to go on a needle. And I'm going to just take that off there. What I might have to do is put them on a needle and then take them off and switch them over to another needle. We'll see how it looks in a minute. It doesn't matter which shoulder seam you do first because both of them have to be done quite simply. So what I'm going to do is just move all of the stitches back onto the needle, and yes, I will then have to move them back to the second spare needle. So altering a pattern when you get to different points in the pattern is a choice. It can come with experience, but it can also come with watching other people around you make those kind of choices. So certainly, if you are looking at me going, oh, I'd like to do that as well, then by all means do this as well. If you don't have the experience of knitting multiple jumpers before you, and other parts of knitting that might have similar instructions, then you can certainly make these choices led by other people in your life who've done knitting with you or are showing you what they're doing. So it doesn't have to be a case of, well, I've never done this before so I can't do it, but be very wary and do a lot of research before you make choices as well. When it came to the back of the jumper, I was realising that it was becoming longer than I wanted it to be. So the body was becoming too long. And I made a choice at that point to say I'm not going to knit it as long as it suggests it to, because I'd like it a similar length to this particular jumper that I happened to have been wearing for the last few days, and I really appreciated that size of jumper. So you can definitely, I've missed a stitch there. Oh, that's annoying. I'll pick that up when I get there. Just realised that's dropped off of the needle. Probably that dropped off of the needle as it went into the stitch holder. As it went on that, it probably dropped off the needle. But I will pick it up. This is something that you have to do as you're going through. Check that you've got the right number of stitches and that you are on track. Yeah, that means I've got 38 stitches, including that one. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 38. So to cast off, I will release this little bit of yarn that I tied into a little piece there. Shall I show you what I did to tie that into a little skein there? From the point of the stitches, I went round, 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 and then I was able to take this last bit round and round, and then I put it through that piece of yarn there so that it was taut. Okay, I'll show you that again from the point of the stitches rather than the end of the yarn. Round, 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 and then at this point I opened it up, took it off my fingers, round, 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 and then I put this loop through one of those bits there. Okay, so then I can pull that a little bit taut and it just holds it in place, so it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, so that is easy. I do that often when I'm knitting and I just know I need more yarn to maybe cast off like I'm doing here, or to perhaps even sew a longer seam, something like that. Now what I'm going to do, it doesn't matter if you do the left or the right seam first, it's a seam and you're doing it. So I'm going to use this yarn here. What we need to do is knit each stitch. So we're going to knit into the front and into the back. So it's like knit two together because we're knitting two stitches at once. But we're putting that through, dropping the stitches off of the front and the back at the same time. There we go, off the stitches, and now I can move that first stitch over the second one. That's a cast off. Through, round, and drop, and drop, and now move that first stitch over the second one. Through, around, pull that off, and over the second one. And over like that. So I just need to do both of these shoulder seams. What drew me to see this as a possible mistake in the pattern at first was reading the next part of the pattern before I did it. I knew I'd finished the back, I'd done all of this shaping, and as I was approaching the back, I always get myself ahead of time, so I know what's coming next. I read the next bit of the pattern again, I get myself into the space of what I do next, so it doesn't feel so daunting when I have no idea what's happening next. Oh, that fell off the needle before I wanted it to. I read it and I kept reading it and reading it, and I thought, wrong size together? They're wrong size together? That's wrong. Surely that's wrong. And I just kept looking at it. And I let myself sit with it. I knew the next bit of the knitting was coming. It wasn't absolutely imminent. And I just was wondering about it for a little while. So I kept looking at it and I go, no, it's definitely wrong. It's definitely wrong. And I read it again and I thought, yes, you weren't mistaken when you first read it again. And then I even thought, okay, maybe you're thinking that 3 stitch cast off, 3 needle cast off is done incorrectly, that you've been doing it wrong all the time. So I watched loads of videos on it, including my own. I'm teaching this, surely I know what I'm doing. But of course it was the pattern that made the mistake, I thought, not me. So like I mentioned on New Year's Day, I said, right, I am going to do it the right way, and I'm pretty sure this must be a pattern mistake. Someone else actually in the comments, this is great, I love knitting, I love your YouTube comments. Someone else mentioned in the comments that there's a knitting pattern corrections part of the Knit Rowan website, and there usually is on most knitting pattern websites. When I find a mistake in my knitting patterns, I actually just replace the original knitting pattern. there's no need for you to go and scribble all over it and forget that it's a different one. You just come in and download it whenever you want it. Make sure it's up to date. Right, we are at the point of pulling the stitch up. So I'm going to do this from this side. So it goes through there. Oops, it's got to fall that bit through first. Okay, that's that one. Next one. And have I missed a row? No, I think I got them all. There. Okay. Right, that one and that one. So yeah, I watched all of those videos. I looked at the corrections website on Knit Rowan, and the corrections page didn't actually show anything to do with this jumper pattern. So then that comment said go and look at the photo, and it was you had to get really close and you had to pick the right photo to show it, which I find quite frustrating. If there is some kind of anomaly on a knitting pattern like this, it's a really good idea to have a decent photo of it so you can see what's happening. But hey ho. So I knew it wasn't me that was making a mistake. It was just me not reading it wrong, but me mistaking the fact that it was supposed to be a feature of the knitting pattern. Like I say, if it was a larger yarn, if it was a thicker yarn, and there wasn't already so much feature on the knitting pattern, i.e. so much colour blocking everywhere, then it might feel more in line with what I was knitting. But to be perfectly honest, I didn't want the attention to be drawn to the shoulder very small minor epaulette thing, when actually the most important part in my mind was the colour shapes that were all over it. I was making a point of knitting carefully. So yeah, that's two things I've altered. I've altered the length of the body, and I've also altered how the shoulders are being connected together. So there you go. That is my 3 needle cast off. I'll just do what I usually do with that one. There you go, that's the last stitch. And that's how it joins. Doesn't that look good? Oh, fiddle. That stitch had another thread in it, which means I really need to undo that lot. I'm going to be frustrated with myself if that catches on something and I haven't gone back. Okay, I'm doing this for a second time now. That was a bit of a hassle, I have to tell you, because I had to keep in mind the fact that a lot of these stitches in the previous rows were wrapped, and that made recognising which stitches were which quite complicated. But I just wish I'd been a little bit more careful when I was picking up that stitch as I was casting off there. But hey ho, I've got snow outside of the window to look at. That's quite interesting actually. Talking of knitting with the seasons, if I was sat here in the summer, I'd be enjoying the fact that I've got beautiful yellow flowers in the grass to look at. But there's wet snow falling right now out there. And that's what I can take joy in. I actually need to close the curtains because it's the afternoon and the sun is pretty much set. I can look at it for a bit longer. That's the first one done. Oh, I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed as I open this to make sure it looks okay. Yes, it does. Isn't that beautiful? There you go. That is the shoulder seam. And it's taut, but it's got a little bit of stretch to it. And if it was the other way around, it would have that little bit of a ridge to it. And actually, I'm not sure I want that on the outside of a jumper like this. Okay, so that's the first side. I'm going to sit here, put the other side on the needles and cast that one off as well in exactly the same way. Just have to keep note of the fact that these two stay on here because they are the collar. What I could do, and it is tempting, but I'm more than happy to leave it to the end, is actually knit the collar now. But I will leave that to the end until the whole jumper is finished. I will carry on with the shoulder seams now. That is an option if you don't want the stitch holders to stay on there for a long time. Well, that was fun, wasn't it? You can make changes if you want to, if you choose to. And it doesn't need a great deal of experience. It just needs to be that you've confidence as well to undo that if you don't like what you've changed. I've known through a lot of this jumper, if I'm knitting it and I make a slight change or I test something out, I can completely unravel it and start that little bit again. I'm more than happy to do that. So recognise that in yourself too. Do you have that confidence to say, actually, if this goes wrong, I can just start again. If this goes wrong, I can unravel a couple of inches and start over. That's certainly something to take note of. Hi, welcome back. And that was a fun one, wasn't it? Now, you saw me make a mistake in the fact that I didn't pick up that stitch very well. And I went back to repair it. This is something to note. When I do that, it's because I know long term I don't want that mistake to be part of the finished net. There are times when that's okay, it doesn't matter, but that loop of yarn could actually get caught on something, and I wouldn't want that to happen. So definitely something to think about. Will a mistake be something that you actually want to repair long term? And it's that long-term focus that will really help you decide whether a mistake needs to be changed or not. Now, I went ahead and did the right shoulder as well as the left shoulder. So I did the second shoulder. Now, the second shoulder, I realised I was doing just like it said in the pattern with wrong sides together, which meant that I had the seam shown on the outside, which isn't what I wanted. And it was completely different to the other shoulder, which meant I needed to unravel that, put all the stitches back on the needle, and just change it. When I changed it, I did it incorrectly, so the front was twisted. So it was all over the place, and I made a massive mistake with that. So I had to unravel it again, and I had to knit it together with right sides together correctly. So that was 3 attempts, and third attempt finally did it. But boy, was that fun. And I tell you, I just want to share this with you because it's not just beginners who make mistakes. We repeat mistakes. We do things that we never expected we would do. Every knitter comes across this. And for this reason, I wanted to show you this. I wanted to share this with you. And like I said, it is about whether or not you want this to be showing long term, whether it's something that you can hide long term, whether it's something that actually needs to be repaired now, or whether it actually isn't going to show or do any damage long term.
As far as the drop stitch is concerned, it would have been caught on something, it could easily have been caught on something, and I didn't want that to happen, so I had to do that long term. So definitely, I needed to go back, having picked it up, and pick it up again. I didn't mind doing that. That was fine. The 3 attempts at the second shoulder. I mean, yeah. To say frustrated, I tell you what I did do. After the 2 attempts and I realised I still done it wrong, I stopped. I put it down. I went and put Jimmy Carr, 8 out of 10 cats on does countdown on YouTube. And I sat there and I watched that. And then I got my knitting and I did it while it was still on. So I was laughing, I was having great fun, and I knew that I was going fine. I kept checking it and everything was hunky-dory. So it made it a bit better. Have a break if this kind of thing happens. Just be aware of what your body and your brain is doing. If you really are starting to get full of tension, then it's not a good thing. Knitting doesn't do that. Knitting is about relaxing, which is why I have other things to pick up at the same time, and which is why I actually waited to do these shoulders, because I knew it wasn't just an easy task to do it quickly. I also wanted to film it for you. But the next thing is picking up the stitches for the armhole. And that's not a quick, easy, done it process. It's not a difficult process, but I have to concentrate while I'm doing it. So it's something else that I will say, I'm going to do this while I'm focused, while I have concentration, and probably first thing in the morning, again, while I'm filming. I'd love you to see that as well. But this will be something that happens when it happens, and I don't have to do it now. I may do it tomorrow morning, I may do it over the weekend, we'll just wait and see. I tell you, like I mentioned when I was filming, it was lovely sitting there watching the snowfall, and this is one reason why I'm sat out here. It's nice to see. It was yesterday that I was knitting, by the way. By the end of it, I thought, no, I can't just go on camera and say, oh. It's the next day. It's lovely to see the snow still on the ground. You can see it here. And actually shows me a very interesting thing. Winter and the hibernation period, we are still in that. January may seem like, oh, brand new, fresh start, let's get going. We're still in hibernation. We're still in rest. Be slow. Let the body heal. And let nature just show us when those seeds are starting to blossom again. There are little things starting to grow out here. I have bulbs like an inch or 2 out of the ground. That's not unusual for this time of year. But they are still dormant in the respect of they're not blossoming. And no way are they poking their head so far up out of the ground that they're gonna get stung when it snows and it rains and the temperature drops so much that it's going to be too much for them. They're there just showing that it's okay and that they're okay. I'm happy with that. I would very much say recognise that in the rest of your life as well. The winter around you, and I've noticed this certainly over the last few weeks, is that when winter is like this, we can be way too busy. Over Christmas, it's just one of those things, isn't it? We can be way too busy trying to do other things and making actual interest in our lives when we still need that rest. And like this week when I've had a later video, then I just needed that rest. That's okay. And it's okay to say, well, the earth and the wind and the rain and the snow and the winter outside is giving me a bit of battering, and I need to have some cozy hug family time. Then just be there and do that. And let the knitting reflect that as well. Let the rest of the life reflect that. Are we having easy stews at the moment that just need to sit on the hob for 3 hours, chuck it all in at the beginning, and then it's done? That's easy. That's what winter's all about. It's nice and warming, it's cozy, it's reassuring afterwards. Nice. That's what winter's all about. It's definitely why I've created the Knitting Rhythm podcast as well, because I'd love to just share with you how much I've noticed, how nature's rhythms can come so much into our lives, more than we recognise. I know there's a lot of things out there about moon phases, but moon phases change throughout the year. It's not just, it's the full moon, it's the new moon. We call them different things, and they're there for different reasons in the spiritual sense. But it's the seasons of what nature does around that I find more fascinating. Like I say, it's the little bulbs that are starting to show their heads. It's the leaves that are still on the ground from autumn. You can only be so pedantic about picking all of them up from the lawn, you know what I mean? But they're still there, and they're still brown, and they're getting frosty and icy, and that will make them more crisp in the spring. And all of the seed heads that are there from the wildflowers that we have in our lawn. We have a wildflower lawn. It means that it doesn't get boggy and marshy over the winter. It's beautiful to see all the different shaped leaves and the different colours they have and all of that sort of thing. And all the seed heads that are around me as well. They're different colours too. And they're completely different colour to that which they are during the spring and the summer. And even the autumn as well. So it all has its own flavour. And that's one of the reasons I'm creating Knitting Rhythm, is so that we can knit with that. We can enjoy that and bring that beauty into the rest of our lives as well. So I do really hope you'll join me for that. It's, like I mentioned last week, it's like a big course. 52 weeks of podcast audios. So it's on your podcasting app, and you get a notification whenever a new one comes out. But what it means is that we're there all the way through, and you don't just do it in 3 weeks. It's there all the way through. And I'm really excited to just share that rhythm with you and see how it moves and see how it grows with us, and how we can really bring that into our knitting. Maybe not just this year, but perhaps next year as well. I'm excited to do this long term. I will leave the link for the podcast down below. It's in the description. And yeah, do come and join me for that. So I'm excited for it. Next week, we're going to start talking a bit more about beginner basic knitting. But experienced knitters, you're going to be wanting this too, because we are saying, what is it about basics that is so important that we mustn't forget? And if you are brand new to the Knit with Hannah journey, and to the knitting world journey even, in fact, then stick around. I will leave a link for you below, because knitting with different yarns is mentioned in the beginner mistakes PDF. Go and have a look at that. It's about 6 mistakes every beginner knitter needs to avoid, because, like I mentioned today, we can all make mistakes in our knitting, and it can seem that they're just unending. That why are we making them anyway in the first place? But if we can avoid some of the fundamental ones, like knitting needles and yarns that we choose, and when we learn something new or when we don't learn something new, all of those things actually can make a big difference to finding it easier, and we make mistakes that we're able to fix. I think that's a big, big part of it. I was able to fix those mistakes because I had enough experience while I was knitting that jumper to just say, what have I done wrong and how do I change it? That's an important part of knitting too. So do go and have a look at that. That's in the description, 6 beginner mistakes every knitter needs to avoid. And yeah, I'll be talking more about those fundamentals over the next few weeks and just sharing some really interesting things that I found out, especially while I've been knitting over the last few months. But obviously a lot of that comes from my life journey of knitting, and I hope you'll all join me for that. I'll leave the playlist here for more of the knitting jumper videos because I've now filmed quite a few videos. I'm happy to keep sharing them as well. Bye for now. Happy knitting.